Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll start the lecture. Yeah, I have been getting a lot of emails about live lectures being compulsory or not. Okay, see, I mean, I don't know what to say about that, because see, we started live lectures because I felt it was a unanimous request from the class that everybody wants. Okay. When somebody says, okay, I can't attend live lectures because of whatever connectivity issues and all, but I mean, it's a bit sad thing for me. Okay. So I'll just say that I will not insist on live lectures, but I want significant people in the live lectures. Okay, otherwise I can't continue. I mean, it's not worthwhile. Okay, so if I know that 30% of the students are not attending, then it's not worth having the live lecture. I'll rather have a discussion session. Okay, so I request all those who said will not be able to attend live lectures, please do so only if it is something real reason, in the sense that you have network connectivity issues or whatever. Okay, because I won't be able to verify. Okay, so those who have trouble with, so please get in touch with me. We'll see what can be done, because I want to ensure that you're also watching the lectures. Okay, so once we are yeah, I don't have other mechanism for you to ensure that you're watching the lecture, or else I'll give small assignments, which is not feasible in this course given the number of students. Okay, so yeah, so that's all I would say. I will not go harsh on attendance issue, but yeah, please do attend. Okay, yeah, okay, so yeah, we'll just start from the recurrence that we had for median of medians. I hope all of you had got time to revise and must have understood the median of medians algorithm, which was probably the most non-trivial thing that we have done so far in the course. And we'll also see another example of divide and conquer approach, giving a better solution than the brute force or the naive approach, which is for the maximum subarray problem. Okay. So, Srinivasa, can you tell me what are the messages? I can hear sound, but I can't see it. Is there anything that needs urgent attention? Okay. Yeah, there is no message. Okay. Okay, so just recall the recurrence that we wrote for median of medians. Okay, it was of this form. T of n is less than or equal to 21n plus T of n by 5 plus T of 3 by 10 times n. Okay. Yeah, so one thing, I'm sure you might have figured out a better constant than 21. Okay, so 21 was a very pessimistic constant that we had used. I think you can do it with probably 2n or even 3, yeah, 2n probably, or at least 3n should be okay. But anyway, I mean, we didn't do that critical analysis. Nevertheless, so we solved this recurrence. So by a simple inductive argument that P of n is less than or equal to some c times n for some constant. C. In fact, we even pinpointed what that constant was. So in our case, I think it was 210, right? So today we'll just see intuitive reasoning. So in the last lecture, we gave an inductive argument. So fairly straightforward guess and verify solution. Okay. So we'll just give an intuitive explanation, which I believe is helpful in future algorithm designs. Okay. When you come up with algorithms for a problem, this view will help. Okay.
Sorry, sir.
So we made oh, sorry. There is a typo here. Okay. So we made yes, you are audible. Yes.
Yes, sir. If in case like any messages are there, I will by default I will tell, sir.
Okay, okay. So if there is something which needs serious attention, I mean immediate attention, please let me know. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Sure, sir.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So this is a more general form that we looked at. Okay. Say f of n is equal to c times n. So where c is a constant plus f of alpha 1 n plus etc alpha k n. Okay. The condition is together when you sum these up, so these will be non-negative constants. They should be less than 1, strictly less than 1. Okay. So they could be something like 0.9 or 0.8 or 0.99, whatever. Okay. And k should be a constant. Okay. So then we can always say that there is a constant c prime such that f of n is at most c prime times n is a solution in the sense that it's an upper bound for the function which is given by this recurrence. Okay. So in our case, alpha 1 was 1 by 5, alpha 2 was 3 by 10. So k is 2 and c was 21. Okay. So it's not very difficult. By just coming up with an induction hypothesis, you just take f of n as cn as an induction hypothesis, c prime n, f of n as c prime n, then you'll get what is c prime n. Can anybody tell me what was c prime n that we figured out in the last lecture?
210.
That was for this specific case. In general, what was it?
It was greater than equals to alpha by 1 minus beta 1 up to beta. Alpha
Yeah.
1
So
plus
yeah. So yeah. So sorry for the change in notation. So today's lecture I just wrote c and alpha 1 to alpha k. So this will be c divided by 1 minus alpha 1 plus etc alpha k. In the last lecture it was beta. I'm sorry. Okay. I hope this is fine. Okay. So in the previous lecture it was c prime greater or equal to alpha divided by 1 minus beta 1 plus etc. So we have a definite lower bound on the value of c prime, right? So for any c prime which is greater than this value is good enough. Okay, is a good enough upper bound. We cannot write it as equal to, well, we can also write it as equal to, but since we are writing c prime greater or equal to this number, so for any c prime which is greater or equal to this inequality will hold. Okay. It was a fairly simple inductive argument, guess and verify argument. Okay. So yeah, so I'll spend another 5 to 10 minutes to tell you why we got that as a solution. Okay, just to give an intuitive flavor. Okay, so let's take an algorithmic view. Okay, so let's assume that this recurrence relation is given by an algorithm. Okay, so let us measure it in terms of the input length, how you are going to run the algorithm, or length of the input on which you are going to run the algorithm. This is the full size array. Let's say array. Okay, for now, let's imagine it as array. It need not be array. It's just about input size. So the input size is n. I'll write it as 1 into n. Okay. Now we'll make recursive calls. Okay. So what was the work done? So work done was c times n. Okay. Plus the recursive calls. So the recursive calls, there are k many. Okay. So this is alpha 1, alpha 2, etc. alpha k. So together this will be alpha 1n plus alpha 2n etc. alpha kn. Okay. But the condition that alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k is less than n, this input here together, if you consider across all recursive calls, okay, remember that at the first level there are k recursive calls. In our case of medians, we had 2 recursive calls. Okay, so if I add the values together, add the input values together, this will sum to something less than n, right? So this will sum to alpha 1 plus etc. plus alpha k into n. Okay, which is less than n. Now, what is the work done in each subsequent recursive calls. So you are going to call from alpha 1 n. So let me write this as alpha 1 n, alpha 2 n, etc. alpha k n. Okay. So when you make this call, what is the work done? Can somebody tell me? So when I say work done, I'm talking about this value. So to make this call, this is the work done. Okay. To make this call, these k calls, this is the work done. Okay. So what is the work done here? So let's mark it work done. This work done could be before making the call or after the call's return. Okay, so either. So together we'll just call it as work done at that recursion level. So there are k recursive calls to be made now. So for each of them, the work done will be c into alpha 1 n for the first one. So this will again further split into k blocks. Okay, so what is this? So this will be alpha 1 into alpha 1 n. This one will be alpha 2 into alpha 1 n, etc., etc., etc. Is it clear? Remember that now the input size is alpha 1 n for this level, right? Now, out of which alpha 1 fraction goes to the first call, alpha 2 fraction goes to the second call, and so on, up to alpha k fractions. But there is also a portion which is left out, which is not being used at all. This is a portion which is left out. We'll mark it as green. Okay. So now what is the work done? So for making this call, I'll be making work. I mean, I'll have to do work of work proportional to c times alpha 1 n. Okay. Remember, it was c times the input length. For the second, similarly, I'm going to make k calls. And this is a green portion. So for the second, I'll be making c times alpha 2n plus etc. plus c times alpha k for the kth. Now again further, if you go down further, so each of this will expand into so c times alpha 1 into alpha 1n, c times alpha 1 into alpha 2n, and so on. Okay. So let's write down. So is this clear to everybody what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, everybody? If there is any question, please stop me and ask immediately. Okay, so don't let me go on.
Sir, can you repeat the part where you said the green part is left out?
Yeah, so when I say green part is left out, so let's count. So at the first recurrence level, okay, so here when I'm making this call, okay, so I'll just take for the next level what is the total size of the input that is being sent. Okay, so that is nothing but alpha 1 n plus alpha 2 n etc. alpha k n, right? So you can ask me, can you combine? These are all different recursive calls. Yes, they are different recursive calls. I'm just taking a holistic view. Okay, I'm just looking at the size of the total input together sent to these recursive calls. Okay, that is in total. So if you sum them up, because alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k is less than 1, so this total value will be significantly less than n, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So that portion is a green portion. This is the input which is left out, I'm saying. See, the point is, I mean, it may not be the exact input. Okay, I'm only talking about the size. See, in our algorithm, median of medians, yes, it was subarrays we were talking about, but it's not actually, right? Because that n by 5 was not actually subarray, it was medians, right?
Yes, yes.
In a way, you picked out elements and so on. It was not exactly subarray, but nevertheless, what I mean to say is, together, if you count the total number of length of the input, it is something less than n. And that portion, that fraction which is left out, I'm calling it as green fraction.
Yes, okay. This is a general algorithm. That's why I was confused about the green part.
Yeah,
Now,
so no, even when I say input is left out, you see, even in our algorithm itself, it's not exactly the same array you're running the algorithm on, right?
yes.
Okay, so that way it is not, but I'm saying if you look at the total input size, so there is a fraction reduction in the total input size. So green fraction is something which is left out when I say the reduction. Okay, so let's call this as epsilon. So let's say epsilon is 1 minus alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k. So this is epsilon n. Okay, that is a green part I'm talking about. Yeah.
Thanks, sir.
Yes. Good. Yeah. Okay. So now let's just stare at this expression itself and before going to the next level. So what is this value? So this is C into 1 minus epsilon times n. Is that right? So C into alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k times n. Okay. So let's go to the next level. So each of this again expands further. Okay. So this one, now I have input of size alpha 1n. Okay. So it will give me a work of what? So I'm talking about these arrays. Okay. Recursive call corresponding to this recursive call. See, this work is to get to this. Okay. This work is to get to this. This work is to get to this. This work is to get to this. Okay. Now I have to do further works to subdivide this array into k subparts, this array into k subparts, and so on. I mean, k many recursive calls. Okay, it's not subparts as such. I'm sorry to. Yeah, I'm sorry for making that statement. Okay, it's not exactly subarray, but the recursive calls. Now, yeah. Can somebody tell me what should I write here?
For the first part, it will be C alpha 1 minus epsilon n.
Yeah. So C, why is that 1 minus epsilon n?
Like for this recursion, when we combine it, it becomes 1 minus epsilon n.
Sir, actually,
Yeah, that is not right.
in the equation you have written, it should be C epsilon n, sir. The equation you have written. C alpha 1 n.
No. So just see here. So what is alpha? What is epsilon? Epsilon is 1 minus alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k. Is that not visible correctly?
It is visible, sir.
Yeah. So it's so say this is C into alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k times n, right? So what is alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k is nothing but 1 minus epsilon, right?
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah, so it's not completely correct what you said. Okay, so see here the input size is now alpha 1n. Now I'm subdividing alpha 1n into alpha 1 fraction, alpha 2 fraction, etc. alpha k fraction. Okay. So what will be the work done when you make this subdivision here? So my input size is alpha 1n. So this will be now C times alpha 1n plus C times alpha 2 alpha 1n plus etc. C times alpha k alpha 1n. Okay, I'm taking alpha 1 fraction of alpha 1, then alpha 2 fraction of alpha 1. Okay, alpha 1 fraction of alpha 1, alpha 2 fraction of alpha 1, alpha 3 fraction of alpha 1, etc. alpha k fraction. Okay, C is the constant multiplier. So similarly here, C into alpha 1 into alpha 2n plus C into alpha 2 into alpha 2n plus etc. C into alpha k into alpha 2n. So similarly here, C into alpha 1 into alpha kn plus etc. C into alpha k into alpha kn. Is that clear to everybody? Because now n is replaced by alpha and n here. Okay. See here. So sorry. So here n was replaced by alpha 1, alpha 2, etc. Now here again, n is replaced by alpha 1 n. That is all. Okay. So you sum them up. So there are basically k square summations here. That is true, right? I mean, at the third level, you are basically having k square many recursive calls. Okay. So now what is the total work done then? Can somebody tell me? Okay. So I'll just use this space to sum this up. Yeah.
C into 1 minus epsilon square into n.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Okay. So you can just expand this now. Okay. So let's use this space here. So I'll just come here. So what is this? C into, so alpha 1. So what I have is, this is 1 minus epsilon into alpha 1 n. Is that right? From the same argument here. See, I have alpha 1 n here, right? Then alpha 1 into alpha 1 n, alpha 2 into alpha 1 n, etc. alpha k into alpha 1 n. So it is C into alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k into alpha 1 n. So alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k is nothing but 1 minus epsilon. So that is a 1 minus epsilon into alpha 1 n plus, so C stays outside, okay? So 1 minus epsilon into alpha 2 n plus etc. plus 1 minus epsilon into alpha kn, which is equal to C into, so let's take it outside, 1 minus epsilon. This is alpha 1 plus etc. plus alpha k n, which is nothing but C into 1 minus epsilon square times n. So the overall work done here is C into 1 minus epsilon square n. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
hello, sir.
Yes.
Piyush is telling that it's C star 1 minus epsilon power 2 star n.
What is that? Okay, let me check 1 second. Sorry. Okay, C into, yeah, correct. This is exactly what we have written. Yeah, thank you, Piyush. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So C times 1 minus epsilon square n. At the third level, what will happen? That is fourth level of recursion. We'll have C into 1 minus epsilon cube n and so on. Okay, so this is basically becomes a geometric progression. What becomes a geometric progression? The work done. So the total running time, if you unwind the recursion, is going to be Cn plus C into 1 minus epsilon n plus C into 1 minus epsilon square n, etc., 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 etc. Where will you stop? When the input size becomes a constant. Okay, so total work done. This becomes Cn plus C into 1 minus epsilon n plus C into 1 minus epsilon square n plus etc., etc., etc. At the ith level, C into 1 minus epsilon to the I n plus etc. So this is nothing but a geometric progression, right? With the ratio r as 1 minus epsilon, with the starting value as Cn. So if I take out Cn, so this becomes Cn into 1 plus 1 minus epsilon plus 1 minus epsilon square plus etc., etc., plus 1 minus epsilon to the I plus etc., etc. Okay. We'll just leave it up to infinity because I mean what we care is, I mean, when this basically becomes so huge, so 1 minus epsilon to the I becomes so huge that that into n becomes a constant. So we are assuming when you have an array of size 10 or say size 5, you're stopping. Okay, so the algorithm stops. That is a base case for the recursion. Okay, so now what is this sum of this series? Yeah, again, is it clear how I wrote down the series? This is basically essentially the work done, right? Yeah, at the first level Cn, the second level C times 1 minus epsilon n, irrespective of the number of calls. Remember, there are k calls, but for each of them together will contribute only so much. Again, each of them together will contribute only so much. Each of them will together contribute only so much. Okay, so that is a total amount of work that is done. So yeah, so what is the summation?
1 upon epsilon.
1 by epsilon.
Yeah, so it's 1 upon epsilon, that's it, right? So it is C times 1 upon epsilon, or C by 1 minus, 1 by epsilon. Sorry. That's it. That's exactly what we gave as an inductive solution. Okay. Yeah, so this picture basically helps you in understanding. So if your input size, when you account for all recursive calls that you are making at that level, if together it shrinks, okay, by a fraction, then the overall time will be, or overall complexity will be basically a constant multiple of this value, okay, which is basically 1 by epsilon times this 21n. So in our case, 1 by epsilon was 10, right? Epsilon was 10. Okay, so that is the viewpoint. Okay, so now I can throw in questions like, okay, so is this specific only to this, when here this work done is n? What if it is n square? What if it is n cube? Can we have a similar view? Can somebody tell me? Is the question clear? So I'm just say what if I have f of n is c times n square plus f of alpha 1 n plus etc. plus f of alpha kn, or let's say f of n is c times n to the 4 plus alpha f of alpha 1 n plus etc. f of alpha kn.
If we replace all n's with nk, then we might get the same proof again.
Can you tell me again? I didn't get what you said. Replace what?
So in the same proof, if we replace n with n or n power 4, we get c dash and error n power 4.
Yeah, you're kind of right, but there is a catch here. Okay, so it will not be 1 by epsilon. Okay, so what will happen? So in the case of n square, I'll have 1 minus epsilon square n square, 1 minus epsilon to the 4 n to the 4, and so on. N square, right? 1 minus epsilon to the 6 times n square. See this, right? So input size now becomes here 1 minus epsilon times n together, right? When you square it, it's not exactly 1 minus epsilon square. Okay, so no, there is a catch here. So what will happen is, so let's maybe work out for n square. Okay, so that's easier. Hope I have an extra page. Oh, sorry, no. Okay. So yeah, let's work it out. Okay, in this space I'll work out. Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have an extra page. Okay, so what will happen at the first level? So I have alpha 1 n square. So it will not be alpha 1 n square, right? Alpha 1 square n square plus c times alpha 2 square n square plus etc. plus c times alpha k square n square. At the next level, what will happen? So it will be c1 c into alpha 1 whole square n square plus alpha 1 alpha 2 whole square n square plus etc. Remember that is the input size, right? Yeah. So now this changes slightly. Okay, so these are still constants. Okay, but what you are looking at is 1 minus alpha. I mean, so these will be now alpha 1 square, alpha 2 square, etc. alpha k square. So my epsilon now will be 1 minus alpha 1 square plus etc. alpha k square. Okay, so yeah, so that is all it is going to happen. Okay, so this value will be different. It depends on the power. So it's not exactly square. Okay, it's not epsilon square, because yeah, it now depends on how alpha 1 square etc. alpha n square sum up to. Okay, so yeah, so that is the only difference. But even when you have a polynomial function, in fact, this will converge to that polynomial function up to a constant factor, but that constant factor will now depend on alpha 1 to alpha k, but not exactly alpha 1 plus etc. alpha 1, alpha k. Okay, so this will depend on the corresponding power. So here, if you see, what we have is alpha 1 square plus etc. alpha k square, right? And the next level again, so this will be what? If you write this, this will be c into alpha 1 square plus etc. plus alpha k square times n square. Okay, and yeah, so this will be next, it will be c into alpha 1 square plus etc. plus alpha k square whole square to n square. So what I mean is the dependence will be slightly better. You'll get, actually, see, 1 minus alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k, is it smaller quantity or 1 minus alpha 1 square plus etc. alpha k square? Assuming that alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k is less than 1. Let's add up to less than 1. One minus of this will be a larger quantity, right? Yeah. So you'll get a better constant than epsilon. So hence epsilon also works, but you'll get a slightly better constant here. That's all. Okay. Yeah. Any questions on that? I'm not going to write down the details, but I hope I conveyed the message. This is basically an intuitive explanation. So whenever you think of designing a divide and conquer algorithm, okay, so if you are going to get recurrence with, say, linear amount of work, when I say linear, c times n, or quadratic or cubic or any polynomial amount of work, okay, so if your algorithm together shrinks the input size, okay, so if this alpha 1 to alpha k, they add up to something less than n, less than 1, I'm sorry, less than 1, then you can be sure that your running time is asymptotically equivalent to this value here. That is the work that you have done. You're not doing something much more, because the running time effectively becomes a geometric progression with the r, which is dependent only on alpha 1 to alpha k. It could be 1 minus alpha 1 square plus etc. alpha k square, or 1 minus alpha 1 plus etc. alpha k, or 1 minus alpha 1 cube plus etc. alpha k cube. But it only depends on this alpha 1 to alpha k. So hence, if a geometric progression depends only on this, right, it will converge to a constant value. Okay. So constant value which is bounded by 1 by epsilon always. Okay. So you can always be sure that your work done at each recursive level asymptotically equal to the total work done up to a constant factor. Okay. So this is one message we have from this. So once you have this intuitive picture, it's easier to design algorithms. When you design divide and conquer algorithm with a tight requirement for running time, you can always imagine, okay, so if I do a certain amount of work to get into sub instances such that together the sub instances shrink the size of the array or size of the input, then my work done will be asymptotically equivalent to work done here. That is up to a constant factor. That is all. Okay. Yeah. Any question? Okay, I hope there are no questions. So we'll move to the our final problem for divide and conquer. So this is the maximum subarray problem. Okay. Yeah. So this is again an array problem. Okay. So we just yeah, you can look at. Well, it's not exactly comparison model because we are also going to do addition. Okay. So we'll talk about the model later. So let me describe the problem. Okay. So we are given daily stock prices of some company, of your favorite company, let's suppose. okay, over a certain period, maybe 10 days, 20 days, or 30 days, or whatever. It's given as an array, okay. Now our job is to, so these are the stock prices. Say this is an array of size 15 here, okay. We want to compute the maximum profit that we can derive per share if one is to buy and sell the stock in this period, okay. In say in this example, it is 15-day period. It could be n days period, okay. You want to maximize your profit, and you want to see which days will give you that. So for example, if I buy on day 1 and sell on day 3, I'll be making a loss of unit 5, Indian rupees 5 per share, okay. So if I buy on day 1 and sell on day 4, I'll be making a it was a loss, in fact, okay, loss of rupees 5. So here I'll be making a profit of rupees 6. Or if I buy on day 3 and sell on day 4, I'll be making a profit of rupees 11 per share, okay. Or for example, I'll buy on day 3 and sell on what is the day number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Day 9 for rupees 24. So I'll be making a profit of 13 per share. So instead of 24, if I sell on 28, which is day number, I think 12, I'll be making a profit of 17 per share. Okay. Yeah. Is the problem clear to everybody? All I have to do is come up with the days where, say, days ij, such that if I buy on day I and sell on day j, I'll be making maximum profit per share. Okay. So in this case, as far as I can see, it is day 3 and this is 12, right? Yeah, day 12. 17 is the maximum per share. Is the problem clear to everyone?
Sir, doubt. We
Yes,
found
yes.
that I like on day 3 it's minimum and at 12 it is maximum. So can the person buy stocks again like after the maximum and then sell
Yeah,
again?
one can buy.
So
Yes,
in
yes.
that case, yeah, in after this period one can buy on like day second last, which is 25, and then sell on 27. So there will be some more profit in that case. So
No,
like
no,
what
no.
is
This is
the
only one.
solution?
No.
Okay, just one
Yes,
purchase.
one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're saying is, okay, if you what is the maximum profit that you can make if you are allowed to buy and sell multiple times? That's the point, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So let's simplify it. I mean, let's say you buy once and sell once.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with a naive solution. There are more efficient solutions. I mean, in fact, there are linear time solutions. But I'll start with a very naive solution now. Okay. So and then I'll present a slightly different problem, more general problem. Okay, which actually, yeah, it's kind of more general solution than just talking about stocks. I mean, it's a completely different view here. Okay, so here, what is it you want to maximize?
Profit.
You want to maximize the difference in the stock prices, right? On day I and day j, right? Somebody wanted to say? He's waiting. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you wanted to say something?
No.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. Okay.
Sir, but also the buy price must be before the sell price. So the minimum we find must be before.
Yes, that is true. So the condition is I should be less than J. Yeah, you're right. It's a good point. I should be less than J. Buy price should be before the sell price. Yeah. Okay, so what is the naive solution without much ideas? What will you do?
Find min and max.
Min and max, but this condition, right? I should be less than J. That should be met, right? Otherwise, yeah, min and max is the right solution.
For every I, we will check all the possible J values for each
which is
I,
greater than I. Yes.
which is greater than I, and then just store the maximum profit that we have got till now.
Yeah. So that is the first solution one will come up with, right? Just go over brute force. So what you do is you store the stock prices in an array. For every pair I less than J, compute AJ minus AI and take the maximum, right? So run through all possible pairs and compute AJ minus AI and take the maximum. That is a naive, right? Without much thought, you can immediately come up with that. Is it clear to everybody? You just, so for every position in the array, I look at positions later on and compare, take out the difference and take the maximum possible. So in this case, the maximum possible is difference between 11 and 28. Okay. Yeah, there is not much thought into that, right? It's a very fairly straightforward solution. But what is the time complexity?
N square.
Yeah, so I've written it down. So there are n choose 2 pairs, right? So it is order of n square. But what is the model here? I mean, what is the operation that we are doing?
Comparison.
Comparison.
Yeah, comparison also difference, right? Yeah, you also need to compute the difference. Difference and comparison. Yes, you're right. For maximum, we need to compare and we also need to do difference. Okay, so when I say time complexity, it is these operations. Order of n square many comparisons and subtractions, which we'll say equivalent to addition, right? So in arithmetic, addition and subtraction have the same complexity, right? Yeah. Okay, so is the model clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, so yeah, the point is, I mean, can you do better? Of course, I mean, I just want to make a remark that there are linear time algorithms for the problem. Okay. Yeah, there are linear time algorithms using dynamic programming, which we will not be discussing today. Okay. So instead, we'll give a divide and conquer solution, which is better than this n square. Okay. So we'll give a divide and conquer solution, whose running time will be order of n log n. But we need to remember that that is not the best possible. Okay, so there are better algorithms. Probably we'll see when we talk about dynamic programming later on. Okay. So, yeah, so this is what we are going to present. For this, we'll take a slightly different viewpoint. Okay, so I'll just start with a slightly different viewpoint. Yeah, so there are order of n time solutions. We are not going to discuss that. We'll discuss something better, or we'll just see to ourselves that divide and conquer gives a better solution than the brute force. Okay. Okay. So for that, we'll need to reformulate. Okay. So instead of storing the actual stock prices, we will store the changes. Okay. We will construct a new array B, which will store the changes. That is BI is BI, sorry, this is A, okay. So this is I plus 1 minus AI, okay. That is B1 will consist of difference in the stock prices on day 2 and day 1. That is day 2 price minus day 1 price. So B2 will be day 3 price minus day 2 price and so on. We will be storing the differences. Okay, so let me demonstrate it with the example. Okay. So now our original array was this. This was the stock prices that we had considered. Okay. Array of size 15. Now we'll construct an array of size 14. What we'll do is, so the first element is the difference between the second element and the first element. That is day 2 price and day 1 price, which is -4. So it's a negative value here. Okay. The second element is difference between day 3 price and day 2 price, 11 minus 12, which is -1. The third element is day 4 price minus day 3 price, 22 minus 11, which is +11. Okay. Similarly, this one -6, this one -2, 14 minus 16. This one is +5, 19 minus 14. This is -1, 18 minus 19. This is +6, 24 minus 18, and so on. This is -6, and so on. Is the definition of B clear to everybody? We're just writing the differences in stock prices. Okay. So what will be the size of B? It will be 1 less than size of A, because there are only so many differences, right? So many increments. So now let's ask our question. I mean, what is it we want? We want indices I and J, I less than J, such that the difference AJ minus AI is the maximum. Is that right? So how do we reformulate it? So all we need is, so let's just look at it. So let's take sum of B from 1 to 3. What is it? Can you tell me?
10.
Is it
A3
10?
minus
1, 2, 3.
6.
This is 6, right? This is 6. What is that value?
Maximum profit in that period.
That period, right? It's basically 22 minus 16, right? Yeah. So if you take the array sum, so 1 to say -2 up to here, what is this value? This is 10 minus 8. So it is 2, right? So if you look at the corresponding array elements, this is a difference, 14 minus 12. So here, if you look at any subarray and sum its elements, that basically corresponds to profit you can make when you sell on the day where the array begins and the day +1 where the array ends. Is that right? Yeah, or in other words, let's write this as Sij as Bi plus Bi plus 1, etc. plus Bj. So what is this quantity? So this quantity is nothing but, so let's just write it here. This quantity is equivalent to Aj plus 1 minus Ai. Okay. So with this reformulation or with this new array, what we have is, if you take any subarray and take sum of its element, that corresponds to at least one, I mean exactly one particular pair I less than j, or in fact here it is j plus 1. So pair I less than j plus 1, and the sum corresponds to the profit we make if you buy on day I and sell on j plus 1. Is that right? Then we can reformulate the problem as, I want to compute an I less than j such that Sij is the maximum. Sij is this sum from element I to element j. I hope I'm making sense. Any question? Okay, so now the question is, okay, why do we have this reformulation? We'll see it in a moment. But so let me also convince you that even with this reformulation, we have an order of n square time algorithm. Okay. Now you can ask me, okay, why do I need? I mean, so if you already have order of n square time algorithm with the original problem, with the reformulation, I mean, so why do we care? Yeah. So, but the point is, even coming up with this order of n square time algorithm is a bit non-trivial. Okay, it's not as trivial as the previous case, because here we have to compute. So for every ij, you have to compute this summation, which can potentially take order of n time, right? Order of n summations. Yeah, do I make sense? So overall, I mean, at least at the outset, it looks like it is order of n cube time, but with a bit of work, you can actually show that it can be done in order of n square time. Okay. Yeah, so let's not worry about it. What I want to do now is motivate you a divide and conquer solution. Okay, so instead, which is possible with the reformulation. Without the reformulation, it is not possible.
Sir, excuse me.
Yes. Yeah.
You just said that it looks like it's order of n cube. Why is that? I'm not understanding.
See, because see here Sij, right? Computing one Sij will require linear time, right? You have to sum the element array. And there are how many Sijs? N choose 2, right?
Huh.
So if you are summing it up independently for each ij, you are going to get going to spend order of n cube many operations. Okay, because see the number of operations here is j minus I, right?
Huh.
So it can be order of n. Yeah. So in the worst case, but there is a slightly clever idea, because you want to compute every pair, you can actually do it in incremental fashion, and together you can do it within order of n square time. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll leave it here. I mean, maybe in the tutorial or in assignments, I'll be asking that. I mean, exercise questions. Okay. So think about it. It's a fairly simple solution, but yeah. What I meant to say is, like, even the brute force algorithm that we had in the previous case is not so simple here. It requires a bit more non-trivial implementation. Okay. So I think I don't have much time. Okay. But anyway, I'll just quickly tell you that divide and conquer could be a better solution. Okay. So let's do the naive divide and conquer. So let's take the array B and let's split it into two parts, B1 and B2. The first half n by 2 elements are B1 and the next n by 2 elements are B2. Okay. If n is odd, then you take n by 2 seal as the first subarray and n by 2 floor as the next subarray, second subarray. Okay. So B1 here is up to -1, B2 here is the remaining. Okay. Now what is it you want to maximize? So what will be the recursive formulation? You find the maximum in that interval B1 and maximum in the interval B2 and take the maximum, and what is remaining? So within B1 we have these sums S112, S67 in this case, or in general it will be Sn by 2 minus 1 to n by 2, and within B2 these will be the sums. But there are sums which will miss out, right? There will be sums which will be missed out, that is sums that split across. Yeah, you have an element from here and element from here. So if this subarray, if you take the sum, it's going to be lost. Okay. So our recursive formulation kind of misses out on this part, right? This is the only part which is missing out. Okay. So now what is our recursive split? So we recurse on two arrays of size n by 2. And if you solve this split in linear time, say Cn time, then we are kind of done by Master's theorem, right? Master theorem. Okay. So think about it offline. So this sum split across, we can actually compute the maximum among them. See, you compute the maximum this, maximum among this, and maximum among this, and take the maximum together. We are done, right? But the only problem is, okay, this is solved by recurrence with this much work. This is done by recurrence with this much work. But how do we do this? How many sums? How many such pairs are there? N by 2 into n by 2. So it's still order of n square. Okay. Yeah. So think about it offline. In the next lecture, we'll discuss it. We'll see. I mean, we'll discuss the full algorithm. We'll see that this also can be done. This can be done in linear time or linear amount of work. So hence we'll get this recurrence, this form of recurrence. Okay. So think about it offline. We'll discuss it in the tomorrow's lecture. I'm already late. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Srinivasa, can you stop recording?